this edition of Top about Georgia football. My name is Chris Ransom, and joining me tonight we have two guests, William Yannish, who's a Colorado resident, and we have Brandice, who's in Georgia, and we're going to talk about the Bulldogs and the Colorado Buffaloes in college football. Where to begin? Brandice, why don't you kick things off?
All right. Well, it's kind of an interesting situation with both of these teams. They're both losing a lot of starters, which is not what you want coming into a difficult season for Colorado for sure, and a great season for UGA with just a really, really sad ending. But I think that both of these teams are really primed to have a great season this year with quarterbacks that are averaging basically both contenders for the Heisman Trophy, and also very, very capable, and also not freshmen, which is a big issue because a lot of quarterbacks ended up going to the draft this year.
Yeah, that's for sure. This quarterback class is right off. It doesn't appear to have the the sizzle and such from last year. Although Carson Beck, right now he is my quarterback one. He's I've got two first round quarterbacks, and that is Carson Beck and Garrett Nussmeier from LSU. But I feel that Georgia has an extremely good surrounding supporting cast for Carson Beck. He's a guy that he's accurate. He does everything right. His completion percentage. Just through 7 games was like 74.8. Hold on, let me switch my notes. And speaking about it, there are 15 starters returning at Georgia. This is a team, like you mentioned, had a sad ending last year. Getting beat by Alabama, and just ending up outside the college football playoffs. But this year with the 12-team format, there are going to be a lot of challengers in there, and there are teams like Texas, like Ohio State, like possibly Michigan, that have the potential to really do some damage when the playoffs roll around. They have Trevor Etienne at running back. They have the backup change of pace, Roderick Robinson II, and it's they have some turnover at receiver. Dominic Lovett coming in, Dylan Bell, Thomas. The tight end is a huge question as well. After having Brock Bowers for the last 2 years, and just the kind of player that he was. Although Benjamin Urasek, 6'4", 247, he transferred over from Stanford. He was all Pac-12, and has a pretty high ceiling. That it seems he's going to have to work, to get in over Oscar Delp. But I figured that is definitely a thing. And the turnover on the line, but they are seniors. They have been around college football and such. So yeah, what do you think, Brandice?
I think that both of these teams are in very prime position to show America, and also, college football in general, what it is that they are made of. I think that we were really expecting Georgia to have a repeat here, which has never been done, and win a championship back-to-back 3 times. But that just wasn't in the cards for him. I do think that it was very obvious and apparent with Buffalo that the team was very young, and we knew that eventually that would be exposed. But the way in which it was exposed, just it's an unfortunate thing when you have a bunch of talent and the coaches just don't know what to do with them. And I think that a lot of the problems that they had later on in the season was just a combination of exposing the fact that they had not been together very long, and also that the coaches were a little bit not on the same page. I struggled immensely with understanding some of the calls that the defensive coordinator made, and had been gunning all season long for them to get rid of him, and was very glad when they replaced him with Robert Livingston. And I think one of the things that he's mentioned in a lot of interviews and things like that is that he's much more concerned on the skill set of the players and making sure that those players are playing in a position and playing in a defensive scheme that works for them. I think sometimes as a coach, you get so hell bent on, well, we're just going to run this, we're going to run that, we're going to run cover two, we're going to run a man. But if you don't have man or cover two DBs, then you probably shouldn't run that defense. And I think that the best coach is the coach that not only understands the X's and O's, but also understands the psychology of the game, and that every player has different strengths. And he seems to be very strong in that regard. So I'm expecting some pretty good things from both of these teams, but definitely a better turnout this year from Colorado.
Yeah, for sure. Colorado, that is one of the big things. Dion coming out and running the show. He's got Shedeur Sanders and coaching him. But I speak about the bloodlines and the father and son coaches and such as being an advantage. The one thing I see with Colorado though is that really might be affecting Shedeur Sanders and who he is, and not wanting to disappoint his father. I mean, it is one of those things where it's a dynamic, and they keep on with the turnover. And Shedeur Sanders is rated really high, but I am a critic of what he has going on. The ball placement though is absolutely beautiful, and going in there, and having Travis Hunter at wide receiver. The thing is, what I see with Shedeur is something that I was doing in high school football as a quarterback, and it was looking at the defense from a defense's point of view. So he was having to peel back these layers, and the thing is, he is
Light on.
What was that? Anyway,
This is what I was as far as the goes. What's going on with the technical?
Is it going now? Well, I guess we should just continue.
Yeah.
But no, that's the thing with Shedeur is when he goes back, he's looking for the wide open receiver and trying to get him the ball. But getting open in college football is completely different than the NFL. And he has some happy feet when he sets back. He'll be looking through the defense, and when he can't find an open receiver, he freezes, and that's why he ended up taking so many sacks last year. But those sacks also took over for his completion percentage and kept that instead of throwing it away. So it had kind of an effect that way. The interesting thing is, they added some offensive linemen, like the 5-star recruit, number 1 offensive lineman, and where'd it go? Jordan Seaton, and that is going to be a huge thing. But Shador has to get these things out of his head and has to get the ball out. I mean, like I mentioned, the completion percentage, everything is awesome, but the thing is, coming in, you know, he's going to be so highly rated or so highly overrated, should I say. And it's going to be really interesting where he ends up in this draft, because it's not only a question of where he goes, but you know, it's going to be a big thing. You know, they're going to sell tons of jerseys, you know, tons of everything just because of his name. And I don't feel that's very fair to him to be hyped up that much. You know, I mean, the kid, he has skills, but like I said, there are definitely, you know, some issues. And they, you know, started off with 3 wins at 37.8 points a game, and after that they were 1-8 with 23.4 points a game. The final month, they went down to 23 or 20.3 points a game, and it was just like, you know, everyone was starting to figure them out, and the Colorado State game really gave awareness to that. And I just feel that there's going to be a ton of pressure on him, and I don't know how that's going to work out for him. So that's my thoughts.
Yeah,
I think this kid is.
Shadur's,
sorry, go on.
Sorry, Shadur's a guy who could go number 1, but he could also fall out of the first round depending on what happens. It'd be very high on the draft, but I also think he's very volatile because he could fall with bench for Arch Manning. I if this cute draft season is if you're looking for just Carson Beck's your man.
That was one thing with Georgia as well last year. You know, they went from Stetson Bennett, who, you know, I didn't even evaluate because I didn't see him as somebody that was going to make it, you know, much noise. But then going to Carson Beck, and he definitely is a safe pick in the draft. I can see Ewers and I can see Newsmeyer and possibly Cam Ward, you know, jumping Carson Beck for, you know, the number 1 quarterback in this draft. It's going to be an interesting class, and to see, you know, who has the wins, and, you know, like I said, Carson Beck coming back and just being that force that allows them to get another championship. You know, they still have, you know, 33 new players, which is a third of the roster, you know, coming in with all these guys, and the recruiting is great because of the national championships that they have won. But what do you think, Brandice?
Well, just going back to Shador and what you were saying about, you know, worrying about him basically being in the spotlight, and the spotlight taking away from his ability to just do what he naturally is gifted to do. He's been in the spotlight his whole life. He talks about it with his dad being such an amazing cornerback himself, and having been in the NFL and then basically become within that cult of celebrity that some players don't actually get to have. I mean, there are great players that, you know, kind of leave the spotlight after they stop playing, but that was not the case with Deion. So this is not really, I think, even a quarter of what he's used to when it comes to, you know, being under the spotlight. I actually think that he thrives in those moments. I actually also believe that a lot of those sacks were on the O-line. I mean, the O-line, you could see them just not blocking for him, to the point where I was concerned that Deion at some point was just sacrificing his son. And I was like, myself, I would not have been able to just not run out on the field and like just be like, what are you guys doing? You better block for my kid, you know. But he's a professional, so thank God for that, because I don't think the line is very blurred when it comes to, him being his dad. He's out there and he's the head coach and he draws a very clear line. But at the same time, I know every time he took a hit, he was probably grimacing. And then for him to get hurt was even worse. But I do think, like you said, that they have, um, bolstered their O-line quite a bit with additions such as Jordan Seaton. And also, I think that the secondary has also helped itself out quite a bit in the same regard. One of the things also that I think is going to help him tremendously is the fact that when you have a offense with a very high-powered quarterback such as Shedeur Sanders, you've got to give him some targets. And Jimmy Horn was decent, but right now, if Jimmy Horn enters the draft, like people aren't, rushing. Travis Hunter is an amazing athlete for sure, but how many times can you target him? I think that the addition of the new recruits that they've brought in from Vanderbilt, Will Shepherd, who's a senior, and he's 6'3", 205. We didn't really have that big body there. Cordell Russell, 6'4", 210, coming in from TCU. We don't really know what he's going to do because he was redshirted at TCU, but 6'4", 205, or 210, I don't think that's going to be an issue. Now you're going to have these open targets, so he's not in the pocket scrambling, trying to find the open guy, and that's going to reduce the sacks already. Plus, you've got way better protection. I cannot remember the name of the lineman, but I think his number was 73. Every time it was just like, do you just not like Shedeur? Why are you just never, ever making your block? I'm interested to see if the replacement of the entire line, which is unheard of, the entire line got replaced. I don't know if they were all just basically let go or if they just were like, I see the writing on their wall. Let me just go on ahead and put myself into this transfer portal. But I'm glad that they did because they were all pretty much trash, unfortunately.
Right. That was one thing last year at the Colorado State game, Shedeur Sanders, poking that other guy in the eye, that was completely, kind of out of line, and it kind of showed he has some growing up to do. But yeah, you're talking about those receivers coming in, 6'4", 210, everything else, the catch radius and the ability to block out the defenders and catch the ball, and just that is, even high point the ball is going to be a great thing to see because, they didn't have that last year. The one thing, Travis Hunter playing the Iron Man, in both things, I think the one game it was Colorado State, he was in there for, it was an ungodly number, but, Travis Hunter, I think he needs to concentrate on cornerback because, the wide receiver thing is one of those first round wide receivers, have a lesser rate of, success compared to cornerbacks. And there's so much need for cornerbacks these days. But like I said, last year it was kind of his only target. And that was one of those things where he it showed that he needed to do these things and actually work out with his team. So.
Yeah, I think that I'm with you on the fact that Travis Hunter needs to pick. Obviously, yes, in Deion's days, he was all over the place, but it's not that way now. Like you only play one side of the ball in the NFL now. And I actually think, and this is a hot take, he's a better wide receiver than he is a corner. I don't think that he is as fundamentally sound at corner. I think Cormani McClain, I thought he was going to be that guy at Buffalo. I'm not exactly sure what the personal issues were. I've got an idea. He probably just thought he was better and should play. And he might have been right on that, to be honest. But Deion seems like the type of coach that would not really be okay with that, especially considering he himself played corner. Unfortunately, he left. I think he's at Florida State now. And the corners that we have, hopefully, or I keep saying we because Colorado's kind of my team. UGA and Colorado is my teams. Like I don't, they're not obviously. Like UGA is because I'm from Georgia, but
Right.
I don't know anything about Colorado. I've been there like once, but I just love Dion and what he's done with the organization. So go Bucks.
That's what he brings to the table. And these cornerbacks coming in, DJ McKinney, the nickelback Preston Hodge, the projected starters are something that's going to show, because I mean, when they played TCU, that was something else, because it was two air raid offenses that were just going at it with the quickest pace that they could. I mean, that was a game to watch and just see how they put it all together. The high speed takes, and this is an offense that was built custom for Shedeur by Mike Leach, and before he passed away. And that is one thing. He played in a pro style offense at Jackson State, so he has that experience, and to play both kinds of offenses. Even though Deshaun Watson had come out here in the last few days and said that the Cleveland Browns are going to go more to a high pace college type offense, and that is going to be a question, because a lot of times that hasn't worked in the NFL. But these teams coming through with these players and the name, image, and likeness, with all these players transferring back and forth, the offenses are getting simpler, and I feel that is going to have a great effect on coming in to the NFL and succeeding. So, I mean, and then back to talking about the defense, bringing in Robert Livingston, the defensive coordinator who came over from the Bengals. The questions on this team are, depth, because of all the turnover and all, the transfer portal that has happened. And I just feel that is going to be a huge thing. They've got some big games coming up at the beginning of the season. North Dakota State, they're completely underrated. And then they come to the rival, Nebraska Cornhuskers, and that is one thing. It might not be a great team right now, but the rivalry, it's like the Broncos and the Raiders, or the Packers and the Bears. It's one of those things that goes way back. Other than that, they don't have a tough schedule, but Arizona coming up towards the end of the season, Noah Fafita is a quarterback that can play. He is still a little guy, but I feel that game and Utah with Cameron Rising. Cameron is a player coming off an injury, and I had a first round grade on him the last 2 years, and I'm just hoping that he comes out of college, before I retire from the sport, because they gave him an extra year and all. But looking at the schedule, it doesn't look incredibly tough, but finishing off with Utah, Kansas, and Oklahoma State is going to be a thing that's going to decide, which or if bowl game that's yes, or that Colorado goes to. And the transfer to the Big 12 is going to be a big thing too. It's just a completely different division. So, I mean, that's what I've got on Colorado. What else you got, Brandon?
Yeah, I'm interested to see like what they do in the Big 12, and also interested to see what happens to the Pac-12, because it seems like there's nobody left in it. Are they just going to disband? Because are they going to change to like the Pac-2? Because I think the only teams that are left is Washington State and I think Oregon State, and I don't know if they're just staying because they don't know what else to do or what. But it's kind of wild that
Stink. I know.
Yeah, that's for
he's
sure.
probably right.
Yeah, they only have the contract through this next year. I think there was 4 teams when I saw it. I'm still not sure, but you were correct on those two. Uh, is Stanford still there? Or did they transfer? I don't know.
No, I think Stanford is set to go to the ACC,
Mm, gotcha.
as
But
is
yeah,
USC. So I'm not exactly sure who's going to be left. I'm
yeah,
okay with fewer conferences.
right. It creates more competition, I believe,
Mhm.
and that is a good thing coming in. Like I mentioned earlier, with the simpler offenses and all the nil and stuff, the competition is going to get better with fewer, for sure.
And also with the CFP or CFPV being a little bit more streamlined and making more sense as far as the bracketing, I'm excited about that because I never understood how they came up with some of those rankings and how they decided who went to the bowl games. So I feel like when you've got fewer conferences, then that makes that even easier. But I also think that with UGA, with their schedule, they're looking at kind of a different situation from Colorado. UGA's schedule seemed a little heavier in the beginning, whereas last year they kind of had a bit of an easy ride. This year, I don't know. I think they could possibly struggle with some of these teams, particularly with Alabama having just knocked them out of the playoffs, and they're playing them fourth away. That's going to be an interesting game to watch to see how they bounce back from that. I was a little concerned about Kentucky, but I think they'll be okay in that regard. But Texas, I don't know. Texas could give
Yeah,
them a run for their money.
I definitely feel that Texas and Ole Miss is a team that's up there. They have Jackson Dart, and he is he is a good player, but you know, he still struggles at times. And but if he's on, towards the end of the season, that's a big one too. So I definitely see those three. Alabama with Jalen Milroe coming back, he is a very dynamic quarterback, and he still needs to. He's an okay passer. It's kind of like Lamar Jackson in Baltimore, and I mean it's one of those things. I talked about it, and I see Georgia, challenging for the championship, and I don't know. I mentioned Texas, possibly, and Ohio State are some teams that are going to be there. So
Yeah, let's see. I mean, it's also going to be really interesting to see what Trevor Etienne does. The Gators transfer. We know his brother can run, and we've seen him run also. And is he as good as his brother? I'm not sure, but he runs very similarly. And will he be able to kind of make his mark there?
yeah, for sure. The running game is going to be huge because, like I said, they have these transfers coming in, and you're going to see who stands up and who lays down. Taking over. And like you were mentioned, the coaching is something. Kirby Smart had to replace 4 assistant coaches. That I think all of them went off to the NFL or other great opportunities. And that is going to be a thing that decides what this team does with the supporting cast that they have and how they can put it together. It's kind of like in football. You can put a whole bunch of stars on a team, but that doesn't mean they're going to win.
Mhm.
It's going to have to shake out and going to have to decide. But I see Carson Beck being really good, and it's an upgrade over Stetson Bennett, and I feel that uh, that's going to be the key to what happens in Georgia. So I mean, you have any other thoughts?
Not much. I also think that One thing that we haven't really touched on is that tight end position. Both of these teams kind of sparingly use the tight end. I think, with Brock Bowers being gone, and also McConkey, which was a really big target for Beck. It's interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how they reconfigure their offense around some of the new receivers that they picked up, and also if the tight end becomes more of a playmaker. I know I was surprised to hear that Mikey Harrison at the Colorado Buffaloes left. I thought that he would have stayed. He really started to shine towards the middle and end of the season there. But, I think maybe they were just kind of like trying to bolster him because they were looking for someone a little bit larger because he was a little undersized.
For sure. And mentioning the tight ends, that's what definitely one of my positions that I absolutely love. The mismatches that they cause and the safety valves, that they give their quarterbacks is going to be a huge thing. They're going to be looking for the replacement for Brock Bowers, and I'm not sure if that's Oscar Delphin. I feel that Benjamin Yurcek has some great qualities, and coming over, he just might really, really shine.
One thing that's for sure, when you bring in a tight end that is highly recommended, and there's a starter there that just knew that it was going to be his time to shine, it's kind of one of those piss or get out of the pot type situations. Either he turns up or he, shrinks back. So we'll see.
Yeah, and like I said, that receiving core has to figure out, who the number one's going to be and where everything is going to shake out, but like I said, 9 returning starters on the offense is a strength. It's definitely a strength, just having that experience against, like I said, in this nil, time and age. So, yeah.
So let's say Georgia has a great season, goes undefeated, but somehow Colorado comes out. I don't think they'll be undefeated, but let's say they've got a winning season, make it to a bowl game. Who do you think gets the Heisman, Shedeur or Carson Beck?
I feel, that Carson Beck is the better player, and I feel, but Shedeur has that name, and he has that, charge behind him that so many teams are actually looking for coming into the NFL, because that causes so much excitement and so much just what it is, the aura that he represents. But I feel that it would definitely be Carson Beck deserving the Heisman.
You're probably right. I think that, unfortunately, Shedeur Sanders being in his dad's shadow, they're not going to give him a lot. Even if he really deserves it, even if his percentages are better, even if his QBR rating's better, he's not going to get an easy ride to anyone's Heisman Trophy. And even in the draft, I think he might go like Lamar a little bit later. But I think like Lamar, he's going to do well in the NFL. I think Carson Beck is also going to do well, way better than Stetson Bennett. Not exactly sure what was happening over there, but I guess when you've got personal issues, it's tough.
Yeah, and oh man, where was I with that? Just the Shedeur Sanders thing. I feel that is a guy that is, like you mentioned, going later, and that's possibly, what Dallas is looking for, and maybe replacing Dak Prescott, who is a free agent next year. And that might be Deion's way back into the NFL as well, going to Dallas. It's these connections that they have because of, the bloodlines and what is really going to happen. Because if he goes to the Cowboys, I mean, there is a great supporting cast there, and it is going to show, whether he can truly, succeed in the NFL. But yeah, there's one thing, about quarterbacks and what is happening, just the frenzy that they cause. It's like, Chicago gets a new quarterback every 3 years, of a first round pick and some of those things. And they just keep generating excitement because, there's always next year. So
Yeah.
I feel
Chicago
that's
is a
definitely something to
graveyard for
watch.
quarterbacks.
I said that about
It's
Auburn a while back. I was like, that's
uh,
where they go to die.
yeah, basically. Or just go to be there forever and then eventually enter the draft at like 40 years old.
Right. I
But
was wearing my Carson, or not Carson, but Jimmy Clausen jersey earlier. That's where I think he finally ended up before he went out of the league with Chicago. So that's definitely very fitting for some things with these, highly overrated players, or highly rated. You can go either way with that.
I was really hoping that Atlanta would just hold off on drafting a quarterback just one more year so we could possibly get Shador. If he ends up with the Cowboys, I'll be so upset because don't care for them very much. But I mean, I'll be happy for him, I guess.
Yeah, that was definitely after signing Kirk Cousins to that contract, and then jumping up and drafting Michael Penix. Michael Penix, he put up first round film, in 2023, but he had surgery on his throwing shoulder twice, and then injuries with his knee. I could literally see his body torquing because it really affected the way he threw the ball, because he has this kind of windup. And that is one thing about Michael Penix, is he has absolutely no touch on his passes. Everything is just a laser to the target. But I feel that he's an injury risk, but with the cast that they have there as well, that is going to be good. And I feel that they saw, possibly a window to go to the Super Bowl, and they figured that might happen when Michael Penix actually ends up starting. And so, I mean, if you feel that you have a window to win, you should take it 100% of the time. So
yeah.
Exactly.
And who knows, maybe Penix does well here, or maybe he doesn't play at all and they just use him as trade bait to get Shador. Because I mean, I actually think that Penix is going to do great. I think that under, Kirk Cousins' tutelage, he's going to teach him how to have some touch maybe. And I think that it's a perfect pairing of, I mean, who wouldn't want to play under Kirk Cousins? And he doesn't seem like a Brett Favre type guy that's going to, Aaron Rodgers him and not, help him get to where he needs to get.
yeah, Kirk Cousins is just a stat machine. He throws for 4,000, 4,500 yards every season, but he just doesn't have that that heart, that I don't see, that fire in his eyes. People like him because he's such a good quarterback in fantasy football, but it's like, I just traded him for running back and Aiden O'Connell in one of my leagues, and I don't know. It's going to be one thing to see what happens, but the way Kirk Cousins' contract is structured, they can get out from under him, after a year or two, and I feel that they did that knowing that they were going to draft, a quarterback at that time, and it was likely going to be Michael Penix because some teams didn't have him that high, So I got to plug my shit in.
It's interesting. I feel like Penix is in a Jordan Love type situation, because when I saw Cousins' contract, I saw there was a buyout clause in as early as 26. So front loaded. The Falcons can get out of the Cousins con in 26. I think they'll 7 and 7 on a deal. First sit as well in year 4. They'll probably give a 5th year option after sitting on the bench for 3 years. But he'll start. He'll play under that 5th year tag as well. He's going to want more money like Jordan Love. The exact situation as the Packers currently have if he does well, which I think if he does sit behind Cousins.
Yeah, for sure. I feel that is great comparison with Jordan Love, and that's the thing that so many of these quarterbacks are not getting is time to sit on the bench or stand there with the clipboard and learn what they have going. But they still end up as when a quarterback struggles, they end up as the most popular player on a team to the fans because they want him coming in. But it's a great situation for him to sit there and learn and be able to absorb everything in the NFL before he steps out on the field. I feel that is just 100% better situation than thrusting him into the starting position, like they started about 10 or 15 years ago. And one of those things that is very underrated with how these quarterbacks are going to succeed.
It's such a delicate balance, I think. I think that, every quarterback has their different way of learning. I look at a quarterback like Justin Fields, who went to the Bears and struggled. And then you look at someone like Trevor Lawrence, who's at the Jaguars and just now kind of like finding his stride. You also have to realize that a lot of times when they draft these quarterbacks high, you don't have as much cap for, a great line. So they've got to now be really good without the protection that they had in college. And that's tough.
Yeah, definitely. And that's one thing, like Purdy coming into a great situation, but injuries that's another thing with the injuries that forces some of these players to play, like 2022 with Skylar Thompson and Bailey Zappi coming out, a couple third string, middle round picks that got thrust into the starting position, but they both did actually pretty well for what they were doing, and I feel outside of if there is an injury and Penix or someone like that gets thrust in, I feel that he would have some pretty good success. He's had the experience through college, with different offenses and different times, and with Kalen DeBauer, and that's one thing. Mentioning that name, I want to see what kind of effect that's going to have, with Jalen Milroe and what is going on at Alabama. I feel that was a great hire to, succeed Nick Saban.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting to see how he meshes well, or if he meshes well with that new coach. I'm not exactly sure, what kind of temperament he has, Jalen Milroe, but I definitely know what kind of temperament Nick Saban has, and different quarterbacks respond to different types of coaching. So, I think Nick Saban is able to kind of get the most out of quarterbacks in that way. And will the new coach be able to do the same?
For sure. It's something to definitely watch in this league. And you mentioned Justin Fields and ending up in Pittsburgh behind Russell Wilson. I feel that Russell Wilson is spent, and at some point Fields is going to get on the field and he is a very dynamic player. But again, you know, I mean, his arms is just not as as good as his legs are. You know, and that definitely has an effect on what happens. And getting, I mentioned, you know, some of these draft prospects, and it's like, are they going to get, you know, some hungry offensive coordinator that's going to, you know, make them a star, or are they going to get, you know, some other kind of coach that just doesn't have that effect and tries to stuff a player into, you know, an offense that he doesn't fit. So
Yeah, that's going to be the question. With the Buffaloes also and their new OC, to see what kind of offensive packages they have. I'm hoping to see a little bit more RPO. I think that they didn't really RPO enough last season, and I understand that they were trying to protect Shador because he's got a great arm, and it's unfortunate when you've got a quarterback that can run and they just run him to death. But at the same time, you know, the football in the NFL and also in college is kind of going the way of, like, if you're not mobile, like you're just not good anymore. You have to
yeah,
have
for
some
sure.
legs.
Yeah, and I mean, definitely the days of Tom Brady and those are gone, and these quarterbacks are just so much more athletic, you know, even if they don't run. But you know, Shador isn't overly athletic, but you know, he's still got a little bit. You know, the RPOs would definitely be something dangerous, and that's going to be something. I mean, dangerous as in good, you know, compared to just, you know, the simple air raid offense, you know, that was happening there. So, any last thoughts, guys?
No, I thought you two were both fantastic, and I really enjoyed talking with both of you about Georgia and Colorado. I think Georgia's just got some really good offensive line. I know they've got, I think their left tackles I saw Ratledge, Dylan Fairchild, right guard. Is going to moving will probably be somewhat of an asset. Trevor Etienne, who transferred from Florida to.
All right. You got anything, Brandice? Finish off.
Nope, that's it.
I think we definitely got our thoughts out and everything else. So I appreciate you being here. And,
Thank you.
Definitely.
It's fun.
Yeah,
Thank you both
definitely
for joining. This was a blast, and I look forward to do something like this again. I'm trying to figure out why Restream was lagging earlier, but I just enjoyed talking ball with both of you. So it's really not, I'm really not going to worry about that because I just enjoyed talking ball with both of you. And I would look forward to do something like this maybe down the road in the future, depending on how both of you feel. But we'll figure that out off the air. We're not going to get too eager or jump into the shark pool too quickly. All right.
cannonball. All right. No, definitely. It was definitely so technically sound, I feel. So
Yeah.
I appreciate everything, guys. And
Yep.
good show.
Good show.
All right, thanks.
See you later.
Bye.
All right.